good afternoon or good morning, whatever it is. But today, of course, is one of my favorite, we could say, episode, because I am having my friend and mentor, Ilin, Kini. And basically, I think what we're going to do, Ilin, is that we're going to chat openly about things that we talk about most of the time. And this is a place I want people to get to know you. For your information, Ilin is a psychotherapist, and I have known her for 23 years. And she's the one changed my life. And I know she'll say I didn't, but she did change my life long back ago. Of course, I wanted to change, but she was a big help. And with her guidance, I am where I am today because of her. Anyhow, I think you don't like compliments, we know that. So it's going to be a very informal chat, and it's going to, I think why we did this is because, you know, you have so much knowledge and wisdom, and I don't want people to miss that. I want, you know, if through this, what we're doing, people can learn or change something, you know, that will be, we're going to be very lucky. So, hi Elaine.
Hello.
Elaine is Canadian, but she lives in New York. She used to live in Dubai for 20 years?
25 years.
25 years, mashallah. I got to know you 25 years. It was just the beginning that you have came. It was not 23, maybe 24, I would say, because after a year I came to you. And I met you at the center that you were you wanted to start working in. I told you, I remember we were in the living room and I know what you were wearing, and I saw, who's this woman? And I thought, I wish I could go to her, but then she's a friend of my friend, and I'm afraid if I tell her something, she's going to go and tell my friend. Imagine how, when you're young, how you think about things. And what do you remember?
I don't remember that particular meeting. I remember when I did meet you, though, or my memory of it, because I think that when I first arrived, I was, everyone, it was very hard to distinguish one person from another, and I was not so used to the Arabic language, and so everything was a bit of a blur at the beginning. But my memory is when we went with some friends and we had a sushi dinner.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at you, and you were full of life, full of fun, and everybody was laughing lots. And I think that in that minute, I a little bit fell in love with you.
Oh my God. Although I was going, now you will make me cry. And although that was a very difficult period for me.
Indeed.
But I
as
think,
we later learned.
Yeah, we learned later on about it. But I think the base of my soul is happy.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I think that many times people can be desperately depressed, very confused, have a lot of emotional pain in their life. But that doesn't mean that they don't have moments when they can be joyful and loving and really embrace life a lot. I think that we have this kind of wrong impression that, you know, sometimes if somebody is depressed, that they always look like that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is not really the truth at all. Yeah. Unfortunately, it can get that bad. It can get that bad.
Yes.
But for many people, they're suffering a great deal, and they maybe even feel like they're just pretending that they're okay a lot of the time.
A lot of times.
And that doesn't mean that they are not being honest. It means they're trying the best they can.
Yes, and I think for me, I really wanted to come and see you. I was seeing someone else. Of course, this was all hidden because we're not supposed to tell anyone that I need help. But it took me 1 year struggling to come to you or not. And I still remember, and I think I was in the beginning of my 30s, which was, 24 years back, 23 years back. And I still remember I sat this way in the edge of the sofa. I still remember exactly, you were sitting here, and then I started talking. I don't know what I said, and I started telling you things. But then you told me something that I didn't realize. It took me a year, right, for me to open up?
Yeah, maybe not exactly a year to the minute, but I remember, and I came to learn really that when people were coming to a therapist at that time, 20 years ago, many people came and they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to talk about it.
It's the fear.
And it was
to me, it was the fear that if I tell you, you will tell someone.
Absolutely, because people did not really trust that therapists do not speak about anything to anybody.
We hope that therapists don't
we
speak.
Hope that. Yeah. Yes, ethically, that is what we really hope. And so I know that I spent lots of time with many people who told me things in very obscure ways, very blurred ways. And I remember you telling me things that I thought, I wonder if she means that, or I wonder if she means this. But I did learn that in order to work well with people, you have to wait.
Especially with Arabs.
Yeah, we have to wait, and eventually, when they come to trust, when a person comes to trust you, they will tell you a little more and wait and see, and then a little more, and then but after a while, it is not so difficult. Though I think that it takes great courage, huge courage, to go and ask for help. Anybody, I don't care what culture you're from, it takes a lot of courage to do it.
For me, I think I was hooked from the first time because I remember I was going through really confusion and lost and shattered and messed up in my mind. I used to feel I was running and running and running, and I cannot stop myself. But then that day, I wish I know the date. I really want to celebrate that day. 50% of my problem went away when you told me that I am suffering kind of depression and that I am a bit of ADD. So that day I realized I'm not crazy, because everybody kept telling me you're losing it and you're crazy, and when people tell you you're ungrateful, and nobody knew my problem. But then, you feel like you're crazy.
Yes.
Because you're not the norm.
Yeah.
Everybody's going this way and you're going this way. So all that confusion of being lost and scared and all that day, I left and I thought, oh, I'm not crazy. Because you gave me a test and I did it, and I thought, so, I have an issue, I have a problem. And then, of course, I never left you since then. You can't get rid of me, that's for sure.
I think we all feel much better when another human being can look at you and say, I know what the problem is.
Yeah.
I think that always helps. It doesn't, sometimes we can name that, and we were fortunate because we could name that.
Yes.
You and I. And then you yourself, I remember after that, you read all about it.
Yes.
and became a bit of an expert yourself in ADD, which means that you tore the problem apart. That's why I always say, I opened a door for you. That's what I did, is I opened a door, but it was only you that went through the door.
Yeah, but then I always say, it's like you helped me help myself.
Yes.
But I didn't know how to help myself.
And sometimes the first part of getting help is having another human being say, well, I think I know what that is.
And you're normal.
And you're normal. It's okay.
Or even if you're not normal, it's okay.
It's okay. It's because people have things. I mean, people always have problems.
Because I always struggled being different since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And to be different is a huge thing in our community. And struggling with my childhood to be normal to my surroundings, that was an issue. Then you grow up, you want to be normal, married, have children, and do the things that you're supposed to do, and then you get hit by depression or disappointments or losing it. Or I mean, I have done so many mistakes back then, and I will do more, but back then in a certain way. Then you think that there is something really wrong with you. And that's where before I met you, when I hit the bottom and I thought, I really don't want to live because of what I was going. But then knowing that it's okay not to be normal, to be different.
Normal is...
what is normal?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's too bad that we've turned the world into, normal and abnormal, black and white.
Yeah.
These things are not nuanced. They're not reality. The reality is that everybody has some kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. An abnormal is it doesn't describe much of anything, really. All it does is make people feel like they're an outsider.
Yeah.
And what is accomplished with that? Not much.
And I think if we say, okay, maybe the norm is that people do some things in like a cattle way or a certain way or whatever it is, that there is no wrong or right. And I do it this way. But then we need to make people understand it's okay if you don't feel you fit in. It's okay if you feel you are not their norm. Because the normal thing in America is different than India, than the Arab world, or even Arab world, we have different kinds of normal.
Which kind of goes to show that really this idea of normal and abnormal isn't very important, because it really just depends where you're standing at what moment.
Yeah, and then as we always say, things change. I mean, it used to be very abnormal for a woman to work in our society. Now the norm is to work and not to work. And the not work is abnormal. So again, it
because
goes through changes.
Culture changes, and as culture changes, the norms of what is normal changes along with it. And so sometimes people are just strictly ahead of their time.
Yeah.
And nothing much more than that.
Yeah.
But whenever you're out of sync with your culture, with any culture, you do struggle with having to find out, who am I?
Yes.
Because if you can't just borrow identity from your neighbor and your sister and your friend, and then this figuring out who am I is a big project.
Absolutely.
And I think, Hala, that one of the things that I know that you've done in your career is that you've helped so many women ask that question.
Yeah.
And that asking that question, who am I, is the beginning of that journey.
Of the journey,
yes. It is. It's the beginning.
And I think it's one of the most difficult questions to answer, and
it's a difficult question to even ask.
Yeah.
People often have been told, you are this.
Yeah.
And so they haven't had an opportunity to actually say, no.
That's what they say.
Yes.
It's not who I am.
Feel.
And because of years and years of you are this and you're this and you're this, we think we are that.
Yes, exactly. And so
Yet,
when we have the courage to start to ask the question, no, I must find out.
when we have the courage, that's a very important
to
line.
ask ourselves, who am I? Then the journey is we find out little by little. Sometimes we find out big chunks all of a sudden. Like you found out a big chunk when you learned that you had ADD.
Yes.
And then
when I'm depressed, because
Yeah.
knowing that you have an issue, that is an answer, like in that state. I mean, because to us we thought depression is only sitting in one place and crying and not talking, which is a part of it. But to me, I was going crazy things, doing things impulsively and doing things in a very shattered way, and that's where I think the question of who am I, what do I really want? First question is, I think we should ask ourselves, who am I? The right, not what people tell you.
And all of us have a little bit of knowledge of who we are, if it doesn't get buried too deep. But sometimes as you and I have gone on and worked together, how many times have we seen women really ask themselves this question, and because they're walking and thinking and they have time for themselves,
They have the chance.
They have a chance to start to answer that question.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's the first question, then a lot of questions is going to come after that.
Absolutely.
What do I want from life?
Yeah.
What do I want from myself? What am I good at? What I'm not good at? And
what's the first step
Yeah.
to being really me? How do I become really me? I remember that one of the steps that was seemed to be a big step for you was when you decided to go to work.
Yeah.
And
I think that's one of the magical advice you told me. I think you never told me leave your husband. You never told me and you just said you need to go to work. You need to find a job. And back then I thought, oh God, where am I going to find a job? But then I think I was so clicked with you intellectually that I started looking for the first time in my life a job outside of what I know.
And it's so scary to take those first steps. I mean, I remember when you were terrified about that you didn't think that you would be stupid, that you wouldn't be able to do it. And within weeks that you started work, I think you began to see that you had all sorts of skills that you didn't even have a clue you had before.
I think work gives you, first of all, it organizes your time. So that did it for me. Then you have something to do instead of having so much time and being bored or keep thinking about things that is not important. Your priority changes. And productivity, which human live on, thrives on, comes up because you're being productive. I remember even it organized my sleeping time and waking time. And I remember when I used to go to work, I used to say, so this is me, because people respected me. I was not very good at what I do because it was something new to me, but people liked me, and I communicated, and I got to know, and I started feeling.
I think when we interact where people value us and think that we have something to add, and encourage us to try to learn to do new things, I think those are very nurturing things, and that kind of nurture is what keeps people encouraged enough to keep going, just keep asking questions, keep growing. And so, you know, the workplace isn't always perfect by a mile, but it often gives us a whole new way of seeing ourselves.
Yes, because of what you do, and and I think it really gives you a purpose. To me, I always tell every woman, go to work, because you have your own money, that helps too, to be independent, which I am very much with that. Then you do have identity. You're learning to have an identity. You're not just sitting in front of your family, which they're too familiar, and sometimes they're harsh or they're judgmental. You're getting other people, they don't have a history. They're receiving you as a new person.
I think that's an interesting point, you know, because within our families, we have a position that we've played, you know, youngest child, oldest child, troublemaker, goody two-shoes, you know, whatever it is. We have these roles that we play, and we can be 60 years old and we're still stuck with that.
Exactly.
And even though we may not even be close to really any of those things, but I think that within family structures, we often get a little bit stuck, and that's not because of any negative thing particularly. It's just that the dynamics in a family has, you know, people get positions, and it's very hard to get out of these positions.
Yeah, yes, very much, very much. I agree, and I think, you know, families are very familiar to you, so they can throw anything to you, and then you get very confused, and you lose your identity, and then you don't know really who you are because of the way they look at you, and you have a certain image in their mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go back to see me before and after.
When I first met you, I didn't know as much as I know now about your culture and your community, and so I saw you probably in a kind of naive way, because you know, I saw your persona, your bubbly kind of self that you still are to this minute. I mean, that part never changed at all, as far as I can tell. But I think that I also came to know that you suffered. You were suffering a great deal, and that you were feeling very isolated.
Yeah.
I remember the fact that, as much as you are bubbly and can always be, there were times where you were extremely so confused that I don't think that you were acting in kind of nearly a frantic way, and kind of an impulsive and frantic
Very much,
way.
yes.
And then over the years, I think the change that I saw is that you organized yourself with this and with that and with something else and with different aspects of your life. Through thick and thin of all of this, you always remained a really caring woman about your children, about your larger family, and even though sometimes there were really big challenges, you faced into them. And I suppose the biggest change that I now know that who you are now is maybe you still have times when you're depressed and tired and fed up, but you don't act on them anymore. You just say, I'm fed up and tired and exhausted, and then you try to look after yourself now.
Yeah.
And
I learned my way to take a break
and how to face problems, not react to them.
Oh, that took me a long time. Yeah, not to reacting.
And so I think that's one of the biggest shifts. And then the other big shift is, even though you've always had, as far as I've always known you, you've always had wonderful relationships with women. And you've always cared about other women. But that has grown so big now. That's a very big piece of where not only have you learned to look after you and to be who you are pretty well 97% of the time.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, most of the time.
You know, you're helping women see that there's a path. You're modeling.
Yeah.
And so you teach and you model, which is very new from where you were when you started.
Yes. Yes.
When I first met you. Even though I know you always did teach a little bit, and you always did model. I mean, you've always been a leader to some extent. It was just very buried at the particular time I met you.
Yeah. I think when you say I do connect with women, I think most women tell me you give us hope. And people want to see a real model, not a story of someone else. I think people want to hear that, oh, you done it? Oh, you had this? So it's okay to be confused, it's okay to be depressed. So I can work, maybe I'll change. I think I represent a living role model for these women that made it.
Because I think, you know, you give lectures and you give workshops, and all of these things are very useful. But probably the most useful of all is your own story of change.
Yeah.
I think that's the most powerful thing that you offer women, that there is hope. There is ways to move forward. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of a privilege in the end to be able to use our emotional struggles to actually in the end help somebody.
Yes. From a psychotherapist and a patient to friendship, mentorship, companion. So maybe we need to talk about that.
Relationships are...
So it's like when you saw me the first time.
Sometimes, you know how all of us, when we meet sometimes we meet somebody and there's a spark between two people.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes that spark just goes out and that's the end of the whole thing, and that's that. But when people begin to invest in the spark, then it's more like a relationship is like a plant that, you water and you give fertilizer and you add nice black soil and you pick off the dead leaves and you do all of that, and that's growing a relationship.
Yes.
So you and we have done so many things over 20 some years.
In the beginning, you were like, for me, as an Arab, that you are like my psychologist. So I have, and we had this thing about being a teacher, So I was like, I didn't know what to call you, and of course you told me to call you Ilin. And then I was like the good girl with you, and I was like coming to you I think I used to come every week, something like that, yes. And I came for years. Mm-hmm. And then I think after divorce, this is what I remember, I started, and then after divorce, I still kept coming until one day you told me, you don't need to come anymore. You're fine. And then you said to me, I still remember the words, in your whole career, you have only done this once. This is the second time. And you said, I'll be honored to be friends with you. I think I almost fainted. Like, me? She wants to be my friend? And I think that's...
But I think maybe at that time you didn't realize that you were giving as much to me as I was giving to you.
I don't believe that, because you always say, but no, maybe I give a little bit.
You taught me so much about living in this community. And you taught me about being patient. And
me teaching you to be patient?
Yeah, you did. And also, I think you taught me that it was, it's okay to be deeply, deeply committed in life. You know, in the West, people keep things in very contained boxes. You're the therapist, you're the client, and then that's that. And these things are there for reasons. Some of them good, some of them not that interesting. And you were one of the people that taught me that don't get in a box. There's no need to get in a box here. So you took a chance on me, and I took a chance on you. And then, over years, you know, I mean, we have talked together on the phone, we talk together in person, we talk on WhatsApp, we talk here, we talk there.
We travel. We visit each other.
Yeah, and you tell me about your family, and I tell you about mine, and we talk about our friends, and we say she said that, and he said this, and we said that back, and we say all kinds of, we go on and on, and because I wonder anymore, Hala, if there's any topics, I don't really know if there's any topics left in the world that we would not be able to talk about. I think we could talk about anything.
I agree. We spoke about every single thing came to my mind through exploring myself and life. I have spoken to you. I mean, we spoke about a relationship, sex, religion, community, behavior, boundaries, everything. I think that's one of the beauty is with you. I can talk to you about anything, and yet you're not going to give me the same answer that as everybody will. You will give me your own version, which is like Anas says, everybody thinks this way and Ilin goes this way. You have your own way of thinking, and I think that's for me, because I don't like we can call it again the norm way of thinking. I want somebody to explore, give me more than that. The chance to get to learn more than just, like you said, compartment or one rule. You know, have the chance to say, I look at it this way.
And many things that you and I have done together, we've had to think very, very much out of the box, and we had to think about helping people that were very difficult to understand.
And we worked together.
Yeah.
Our retreats together.
Yeah. And so, you know, you and I are both very curious women. And we're very curious, and we don't take no for an answer easily, because we want to search for the answer until we find something that makes sense to us.
I have to be convinced.
And so, you know, I think that sometimes you bring a solution, sometimes or a good idea to a problem we're facing. Sometimes I bring the good idea.
It's mostly you.
I don't think we've ever counted.
You know
and
what?
We don't need to.
Like Max said once, he said, this woman doesn't listen to anyone. The only one is she listens to Elaine. That's only. She doesn't listen to anybody else.
and I would say back, yes, you do listen to me, and I listen to you. And sometimes you take what I say, other times you don't.
Yeah, but very rarely I don't. Very rarely.
Which is,
like,
but this is what's, but that's what's really terrific about our relationship, is that we know that we can offer things to each other, but nobody is thinking that you must do what I tell you.
I remember, and I learned this from you, that I will be your friend even if you disagree with me, because I remember there are a few things you told me not to do, and I did it. But you never changed on me. You never blocked me. You never said, you know what, I'm done with you, I don't want to talk to you. Even when you disagreed, and I think one time in 24 years or 23 years, you said, you know, Hala, I don't want to talk about this subject anymore. And I was like, oh. But you still talk to me about everything else. So that's kind of a relationship that I want to spread between our community. It's not just my way or no way, which that's where we used to, especially in the Arab community. And let's be honest, like, you know, they love you to death, and they want to, if you don't do my way, then it's a wrong way. And one of my teachings, because I learned from you, there is not many wrong and right. There are just different way of looking at it, and in different stage in your life, you see things differently, and with different emotions, you make different decisions.
Yes, absolutely.
And I remember a few things that we discussed it, and I was in certain emotion. Of course, you look at it after years and think, maybe I should have done it differently, maybe this. But then you know what? We all do what we do.
Nobody has lived a whole life without looking back and regretting a few decisions here and there. If you have no, somebody said, if you have no regrets, you have had no life.
Yeah.
Of course,
I have a lot of regrets.
Because people make mistakes. They don't look like mistakes when you're making them, because you're doing the best you can. You're doing what you know best. What you know at the time.
At the time.
Everybody's doing the best they can. And so I think we just need to look at our mistakes and have our regrets, and see them as a part of how that actually teaches us, and how it makes us in a kind of a way stronger. You know, somebody who's had a life that has not had hardly any bumps in it actually is very fragile.
And very boring.
Yeah. Whereas if you have lots of challenges in your life, it makes you think deeply about life. It makes you think, and it makes you work hard to find a way through. It's easier to find your way through when you have a good friend, when you can actually talk to somebody.
Yeah, you can think loud with someone.
Yes.
And I think this is your role in my life. I would have not reached where I am today if it was not for you. I would give you the credit, and you should take it, because you've been with me for all these years. By phone call, by seeing you, by visiting you, and then I think there is a very special connection, because what you say makes my mind goes focused. And we're blessed. You know, not everybody can get that chance. And I think one of my main blessings is this, you, because I call you and I'm so confused and I need to think about it. And then you tell me a few things, and then it makes me grounded, and it makes me focus more. And you have a lot of experience in life, and you've been around the world, and you worked with so many other people. And I think, yes, to have someone to think loud with.
Because I think a lot of times when I discuss a problem with a friend, or you discuss a problem with me, as we're actually saying what the problem is and how we feel, and that whole time neurologically, we're sorting it out. We're actually sorting it out. You know, by the time the problem is described, as somebody says, you know, very often actually identifying the problem, the solution just comes naturally.
Yeah.
It's getting the problem right. That's the thing. Is figuring out what is really
the
real
problem.
What is the real problem? And so maybe when we think back, sometimes maybe all I've done is sort of say to you, is this the real problem? Not in those words, but in some kind of way. I don't think I don't try to give you solutions, because you're a very smart woman. You don't need my solutions. You have your own solutions, and you always have your own solutions. What we all need, you, me, everybody, is just strictly having somebody who actually can really hear, listen.
Yeah, and care.
Can really listen and cares. And cares.
Yeah. I think you've been a part of not just a friendship, big part of my life and family. Like, you've been a part of my marriage, you've been a part of my children, you've been a part of my friends.
And what a privilege that's all been.
No, it's my privilege. And now you're a big part of Journey Through Change, because we do retreats, and you get to see so many Arab women in different parts of the world. I would say that I was not selfish enough to keep you for me. I shared you with others. And that's why we are doing this, because I thought, you know, I have been blessed to take and been, you know, nourished with your knowledge and wisdom for all these years. But maybe this episode will help other women to even think about different things. And we're talking about relationships, so they get the chance to hear you. I want to go back to the relationship, which I think you're very expert in human relationship. And where do we go wrong in relationship? I mean, I know there is no one answer, but in general, let's talk about marriage. I mean, you've done a lot of marriage counseling. What is it with marriage that now we have the highest rate of divorce? We have a lot of issues. What is going on?
I think this is a very big topic, but one of the things that is most destructive in relationships, whether it's marriage or friendships or even within, you know, families, is expectations. Rigid expectations about this should be this, and that should be this, and that should be that. And so when people don't have the same expectation,
you get disappointed.
Yeah, somebody's disappointed, somebody's angry. The rules of the game did not get set up properly.
Okay.
I think that's one piece that's very significant these days in marriage all around the world, is that people have, quite frankly, sometimes they have very unrealistic expectations.
And I think that's due to the movies and the childhood about marriage and what we think we know about marriage, and thinking it's a la la land, and I found the man of my dream, or I am getting married. So that's in Arab world, you know, like all they raise you to think about only marriage, where there are very little education about what marriage is, realistic marriage.
Well, this is the thing, because you know, a marriage in the first week is not the marriage 20 years later.
Exactly.
The marriage without children is different than a marriage with children, and
a working woman and a working
exactly. I mean, many factors come in, and many things change over time.
And yes, and like now, marriage now is totally different than back 30 years back, because the social media is there, the internet is there, women are working.
But mainly, I think, years ago, the expectation about marriage was not as unrealistic as it is now.
You think so?
Mm. And because I think that the idea of marriage kind of filling in all the holes of life, you know, that...
it's the solution.
It's the solution to something. It's not the solution to anything, actually. It's a big job.
It is
a great big job. A lot of people are not seeing it as a job. They see it as it's supposed to be some kind of lovely meal or fabulous...
Yeah, going to a movie.
Yeah, or something. But in fact, it's hard work.
It's a lot of responsibilities.
Yes, it's lots of responsibility. And so there's all that. And then I think the other part that, you know, communication, as you and I know, because of our own relationship, communication is the only real, it's the only thing that really sustains a relationship. I mean, if I didn't talk to you for 20 years, we'd still be friends.
Yeah,
but would we have the depth of our relationship? No. I mean,
no history. And
we would lose track of each other's who said this and why he had said that and this and, you know, all the things that we do. And so the lack of communication, actually, in relationships is the other thing that, quite frankly, they kind of die of starvation. And many people will say they might be married, but they feel like they're alone.
Yeah, because you could be like single wife or a husband in the married life, and because there's no communication.
No, when there's no communication, the expectations are different from the two people, and if the goal of the marriage is not the same, the marriage is very vulnerable to breaking up. Very vulnerable.
Yes. So I think, as you said, communication, certain way of thinking about marriage and expectation. Mm-hmm. It is a big issue. Relationships are very complicated.
First of all, you have to know who you are, at least somewhat.
Yes.
You need to know who you are in order to be able to go into a relationship with another person.
To know what you want from the relationship.
Otherwise, you're going to lose yourself. If you don't know who you are, you're going to lose yourself in this relationship. You're going to sort of be a puddle.
So you will not have an identity.
You won't have an identity within.
Interesting.
So you can't build an us unless you have two people.
Or me.
Two people, two individuals who know who they are.
So you cannot build us if you don't know who is me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's me, then
and then
us.
You have to learn who the other person is.
Yeah, me and you.
Then you create an us. But
me, you, and then us. That's a nice one.
Because if you assume that a wedding is going to create an us, you're going to be very disappointed.
So they think a paper makes them us.
Yeah. Many people think that just the act of getting married is going to make the us, and it strictly does not.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
How do I find me? I mean, okay, we are in a stage now, been through me and you life, I found myself, but then I'm sure people watching and thinking, okay, they've done a good job, but then how do I do it? How I would find me?
You know, within each one of us, there is some kind of creative spark. I mean, you yourself tried to do art,
yes.
to make art.
Yes.
And you did it with some success, but then in the end you decided, no, that isn't quite the creativity. You knew you wanted to do creative things, to create things, but it wasn't necessarily art.
No.
So I think the thing is that to find oneself, one has to be willing to do a lot of experimenting.
Yes.
And you know, try things, like try lots of things. Try things you didn't even think you want to try.
Yeah.
Think about the women who have gone hiking with you and who, you know, they do something as simple as going on a big hike, and they find out something about themselves. They find a lot out about themselves.
Yeah.
They find out that they had strength they didn't even know they had.
Mm-hmm.
They find out that they maybe whine and moan too much. Maybe they find out many things.
Yeah.
The main thing is to be willing to explore and to not see anything as a failure. Because you aren't doing, making pieces of art at this minute did not mean that you were a failure as an artist. You just knew that it wasn't quite the right fit for you.
Yeah.
So everything leads to something else.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's sort of doing things outside yourself to kind of, and then there's a lot of thinking now that you need to explore inside yourself. And you can do that with everything from meditation to therapy.
To exercises.
Yeah, exercise, therapy.
Writing exercise.
Writing. There are many things to sort of get acquainted with yourself inside yourself.
Yes, and ask yourself questions.
Yeah.
I think one of the self-awareness is to take that cover that you had for years and be really looking into yourself with no addition, just the real you, which is very scary sometimes. Who am I really? Am I a kind person? Am I really a kind person like everybody says? Or I'm pretending? Or sometimes I really want to hurt people, but I don't want to show it. Am I envious? Am I generous? Do I like showing off? Am I spending money because I'm depressed, or because I really like the piece, or because I'm eating because I just fill a gap? I think these things, that self-awareness brings it to you.
In the journey of learning who you are, who I am, we don't always just find out positive things. We also find out sometimes that we have some terrible wounds.
Yes.
Sometimes we find out that we're full of emotions that we feel very ashamed of, really.
Yes.
Sometimes we find out that we're actually a very angry person, but we've been having the mask of niceness for our whole life.
Or anger.
Yeah, again, to explore who you are is a courageous thing.
Yeah. And a tough one.
It's tough, but people can do it because people actually are strong. They just don't believe they're strong. So again, sometimes getting a little help here and there, whether it's therapy or a coach or whoever one needs. These are the things that can sort of keep you going when you get bogged down and not quite know what you should do next.
Yeah.
And getting bogged down, meaning getting stuck, sort of not quite knowing how to explore anymore, that happens to all of us all the time.
Yeah, but that's one of the things I think people go through. They want to change, they get excited, then they get stuck. And then some of them leave it, some of...
Yeah, sometimes we get stuck and then we kind of give up.
Yeah.
But getting stuck is usually the place where actually, in fact, you're this close to making a big breakthrough.
Okay.
Being stuck is not a negative thing. Being stuck is a big clue.
Wow.
It's a big clue. And that is where going to somebody and just saying, I'm stuck, and trying to tell a person how you feel about being stuck and what you think is making you stuck and blah, 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 blah. Eventually, there'll be a little crack.
And then they come out.
And then you can get through.
Do you sit alone and think, what did I really learn from life? I mean, isn't it interesting if we just sit there and think, these years that I have lived, I know we learn a lot, but main or very important things that what did you really learn from life that maybe you have not learned it before, or your upbringing taught you something else?
You're asking me what's the biggest lesson I've learned in life?
Not just the biggest, what in general? I mean, I would say one of the things I learned in life that there are not many wrong and right. There's so much gray than black and white.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things
I sure agree with you on that.
Yeah. Because I used to be rigid. I used to have everything like it has to be right or this is wrong. And then you learn, there's so many faces of right and different or wrong in different ways.
I think one of the lessons in life that I've learned is everything is temporary, and life changes constantly. And when you think the biggest deal in the whole entire world is happening, 2 years later,
not even 2 years, less than it.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that I've really learned is to try to, in the middle of difficulties, is to remember and embrace the fact that this is going to change.
It will pass.
It will pass.
I think I always say this is interesting because that's one of the things helped me when I was going through a big problem in my life back then, that this will pass.
I think that when you lose track of the fact that things are temporaries, depression is often really the fact that people feel that it never will pass.
Yeah, you're stuck there.
That you're stuck. And so this belief that things will move forward somehow, not always for the better, not always for worse, just they change. This is one of the pieces I think that can help a lot of people feel that they're not stuck.
And it will change.
It will change.
One other thing I've learned from many, maybe hundreds of things, that there are so many forms of relationship and friendship, and what could be the thing for you now, it doesn't have to be the thing after 10 years or 5 years. I've learned that the most complicated relationship is marriage, because it involves intimacy and it involves privacy, and it is two people from different background joined together. They only make it if they really understand and expect. I know you had a very good marriage and you had a very long...
I had a very... I did have a good marriage. I was married to a person who really was one of the best friends I ever had in my life. And we were married for a very long time, so so in a kind of a way we grew up together. We grew each other up. And but those are sometimes just things that, when I got married when I was 21, I assure you that I did not know anything of this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So to some extent it was lucky. It was, there's some luck involved with this as well. And he and I were together for 45 years, but life changed. He passed away, and I had no expectation of that. It didn't dawn on me that I would actually live a good part of my life alone without him.
Without him,
yes. And so this is what I mean about life has taught me that everything is temporary.
Yes.
Good things and bad things.
Yes. And you have a daughter and a son, and one granddaughter.
Yes.
You have been influenced a lot by being in Middle East and being between Arabs. Did that influence you with your children? The way, like an Arab mother is very different with her expectation with her children. Do you think that?
my own heritage, I'm Canadian, but my heritage was German and French. My father was German, my mother's French. And both of those families, both of those nationalities have big belief in family. But it really has been the Arab world that has truly showed me the value of family.
Yes, we have that.
And it's one of the greatest gifts I ever received from here is to see and experience how strong people can be when they have
good support
from a family.
Yes.
And so I've worked my whole life to build that kind of family myself. My children tease me and say, "I think you've turned into an Arab mother." And I say, "I've worked very hard at it. Thank you very much for that compliment."
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes, that's a good one. Okay, I would like you to tell me, what do you think, I mean, being honest, I know you are always, but of an Arab woman in general, I mean, how do you see the Arab women have become? What is your opinion? Even if you want to say something that you didn't like. I mean, really, I mean, I could tell you things I like in the Westerner woman and things I would not like in a Westerner woman. And this year we are the year of tolerance in the UAE. And I think it brings the West and the East and, all nationalities, all religion into having peace with them and acceptance.
I think to start off with it, that was one of the greatest privileges of living here, is being able to live with so many people, so many nationalities and things, that it's such a rich way to be alive. It really is, and I've always been very grateful for that. I adore Arab women. I adore them because they're tough as nails.
Yes, we are tough.
And they love to have fun.
Yes.
Mostly all that I know. Even when they're depressed, they like to have fun. And they're women who care deeply about, they're passionate women. They're passionate women. And so if an Arab woman takes something on, you better watch out, because she's going to
do it.
So I have great admiration for Arab women. And I think the thing that concerns me, though, about them is not them in themselves, but the amount of materialism and consumerism that kind of eats up
all of us,
people's lives, and does not bring out the strength in women, but actually kind of makes them just a consumer.
Yes, I agree with that.
And that part I don't like.
Yes.
I think another thing that's that I've very much enjoyed about living here and about being involved with Arab people is you are emotional. You love big. Sometimes you can hate big.
Yes, of course. It always goes both ways.
Yeah, they're emotional things are not swept under the carpet. And in the West, there's a lot of hiding behind analytical thinking and logical thinking.
While we are different.
When you really look at some of this logical thinking, it's not really that logical. It's actually built. It's got lots of emotion in it. It's just hidden.
Hidden. Okay.
And you have an opportunity to live closely with other cultures. The biggest gift it gives you is that you see your own culture very differently.
Yeah.
because you can see things that you don't actually see if you never leave that country.
Yes, you're right. I think for me the best advice is one of the best advice you give me is find a job. That changed my life 180 degree because I became independent and I found myself through that. Learn to love yourself. I think that's how I would say it, yes. And you?
I think the best advice I've been given is slow down. I seldom take it, but it is the best advice I've been given. And maybe the best advice I feel that I've ever given is to tell maybe you and other people as well, you are not broken. You are not abnormal. You are fine. You just need to find yourself.